They will not break me. We will survive.
It was early in the morning when Amina's life began to unravel. She sat in the mud outside her family's hut, her hands trembling as she held her newborn baby. The village gathered around her, whispering harsh words under their breath. How could a young girl like her bring shame to her family? They asked, pointing fingers. Her own mother refused to even look at her. Amina felt like the world was closing in on her, her heart heavy with regret. The dream of finishing school, the hopes of a bright future, all seemed gone in that moment. She wasn't just rejected by her family, the entire village had turned its back on her. But there, in the midst of rejection, something inside Amina stirred. She gazed down at her baby, whose innocent eyes stared back at her, and a strange feeling of strength began to form. No one believed in her, but she knew she had to believe in herself. I will not be the joke of this village forever, she whispered to herself, clenching her fists. The villagers laughed, but Amina made a promise: she would rise, and she would prove them wrong. No matter how hard life had struck her, she would find a way to shine. Amina's first step into the world beyond rejection was a reluctant one. She didn't know what to do, or where to begin, but she knew something had to change. That evening, while the village slept, she made her way to the nearby forest. There, she gathered herbs that the village elders often used in their traditional healing practices. She remembered the old stories her grandmother told her about plants with magical powers, healing diseases, and bringing wealth to those who knew how to use them. Though the elders mocked her, telling her she was too young and too foolish to understand, she worked late into the night, experimenting with the herbs and learning their uses. Weeks passed, and soon Amina had become an expert in the art of healing. People who once mocked her came to her for remedies. "Help me," they would say, bringing sick children or ill elders to her doorstep. Slowly, word spread that Amina had a gift, and the villagers who had once rejected her began to change their minds. But for Amina, healing wasn't enough. She wanted more. She dreamed of something bigger. One night, while nursing her baby, she had an idea: what if she could turn her knowledge into something greater, something that would make her the richest person in the village? But what could that something be? Amina's opportunity came when a wealthy merchant passed through the village. He heard about her newfound reputation as a healer and approached her with an offer. "I need a special potion to heal my sick wife," the merchant said, his voice filled with urgency. "If you succeed, I will reward you handsomely." It seemed like a dream come true, but Amina was cautious. This was a big risk. If she failed, she would lose everything. But if she succeeded, it could change her life. The villagers still didn't believe in her, but Amina was determined to prove them wrong. She accepted the challenge, knowing she had little to lose but everything to gain. The merchant gave her gold in advance, but warned, "Make sure you get it right. If you fail, there will be consequences." That night, Amina worked through the hours, mixing herbs, carefully following the old recipes she had learned from her grandmother's stories. As the sun rose, she was exhausted, but she knew the potion was perfect. She handed it over to the merchant, her heart pounding in her chest. The merchant left, promising to return. Days passed, and Amina's nerves grew. Was the merchant going to honor his word, or had she made a mistake trusting him? The merchant didn't return as promised. Instead, he sent word that the potion had not worked and that he would not be paying her for her work. Amina's heart sank. She knew the potion had worked, she had seen the results herself. Furious, she went to the merchant's house to confront him. There, she discovered the shocking truth: the merchant had lied. His wife wasn't sick, she had been using the potion to hide a hidden secret, one that threatened to ruin her husband's reputation. Anger and betrayal burned inside Amina, but rather than seeking revenge, she saw an opportunity. This was the moment she could prove her worth, and she would do it in a way no one would expect. Amina returned home with a heavy heart, but she wasn't defeated. Instead, she saw the situation as a lesson. Not all deals were meant to be trusted. But in the shadows of betrayal, she realized something else. She had the power to create her own path. Her reputation as a healer grew even stronger, and soon, people from far away came to seek her out. With each new client, Amina grew more confident, building not just a reputation but the foundation for something greater. She would no longer rely on others. The village had rejected her, but she had started to build a new life, one where she controlled her future. As Amina's skills as a healer spread, she began to think bigger. She had seen how the wealthy merchants of the village were able to control their wealth by building businesses and networks. Amina realized that she could do the same, but in a way that was uniquely hers. Instead of just selling herbal medicines, she could create a line of products that could be sold far and wide. It wouldn't be easy, and she would face many challenges, but Amina was determined. She set up a small stall by the village entrance, where she sold her herbal concoctions alongside handmade soaps and oils. It was modest, but it was a start. At first, business was slow. People were skeptical, but Amina didn't give up. She poured all her energy into her work, using every bit of her knowledge and skill. She even began offering her services to wealthy people from nearby towns, offering health consultations and personalized remedies. Slowly but surely, her business began to grow. What started as a small stall grew into a full-fledged business, and soon, Amina was no longer just a healer, she was becoming an entrepreneur. And she knew that this was only the beginning. One day, as Amina was working in her shop, a stranger arrived. He was an older man, dressed in fine clothes, with the air of someone who had traveled far and seen much. He introduced himself as a wealthy businessman from the capital city. He had heard of Amina's success and was impressed by her work. "I believe you have the potential to become even greater," he said, offering her a partnership. At first, Amina was hesitant. She had learned the hard way that people didn't always keep their promises. But the man offered her something she couldn't ignore. Resources, connections, and the chance to take her business to the next level. Amina stood at a crossroads. Trusting this man could lead to great success, but it also meant she would have to step out of her comfort zone. She had worked alone for so long, relying on only herself. Could she truly trust someone else to help her reach her dreams? As she thought about it, she looked at her baby, now growing into a healthy child. She knew this decision would affect them both. After a long moment of silence, Amina made her choice. She would accept the offer, but on her terms. She would never let anyone take away her power again. With the businessman's help, Amina's products quickly expanded. Her herbal remedies, oils, and soaps were now being sold in markets across the region. She worked hard to ensure that every product was of the highest quality, and soon, people began to recognize her name. It wasn't just the villagers who came to buy her products. People from nearby towns and cities sought her out. Her reputation as a healer and entrepreneur spread far and wide, and soon, Amina was able to hire a team of workers to help her produce more. With each new sale, her wealth grew, and so did her confidence. But as her success grew, so did the challenges. There were always people who tried to steal her ideas or tear her down. Amina knew that the higher she climbed, the more enemies she would make. But she didn't care. She was no longer the young girl rejected by the village. She was a woman who had fought for everything she had, and she would protect her empire at all costs. The road to success had been long and difficult, but Amina was beginning to see the fruits of her labor. Amina's rival grew stronger by the day, but so did her determination. She didn't just want to win, she wanted to prove that the strength of her values and her products were far superior to the competition. She began a campaign of her own, telling her story of rejection, perseverance, and triumph. Her message was simple: true strength comes from within. People from all over the world began to rally behind her. Amina's brand became a symbol of resilience, hope, and empowerment. The rivalry reached its peak when the two companies were set to present at the largest health and wellness conference in the world. This was the moment that would define everything. Amina knew this was her chance to show the world that her products were not only the best but also grounded in something far more powerful than any marketing campaign: authenticity. When the day of the presentation arrived, she stood before a massive crowd with confidence and grace. The entire room watched as Amina's products took center stage, standing tall against her competitors' flashy but shallow display. The crowd erupted in applause as Amina's story resonated with them. The rivalry was over, and Amina had won. The victory at the conference was more than just a business triumph. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in Amina's life. She returned to her village, now not as a failed teenage mother but as a successful billionaire. People who had once rejected her lined up to meet her. Some were apologetic, some were in awe, and some were still hesitant to accept her. But Amina didn't care. She had learned that success didn't need to be validated by anyone. Her worth was no longer defined by the approval of others. She used her newfound wealth to help her community. She built schools for children who had no access to education, and she created jobs for those who had no opportunities. She paid it forward, ensuring that others could rise the way she had. She never forgot the pain she had endured, but now, it served as a reminder of how far she had come. The village that once mocked her now celebrated her as a hero, and Amina had become more than just a success story. She had become a symbol of hope for every person who dared to dream. Just when Amina thought her life had finally come full circle, another betrayal loomed on the horizon. Her closest friend, the one person she had trusted with everything, was found guilty of embezzling money from her company. Amina was devastated. She had given everything to this person, not just money, but trust and loyalty. The news shook her to her core, but she couldn't let it break her. It was a harsh reminder that even in success, betrayal could still strike. The emotional toll was immense, but Amina faced it head-on. She handled the situation with grace and made sure her company remained intact. Despite the betrayal, Amina refused to let it overshadow her achievements. She chose to forgive, but she also learned an important lesson: trust had to be earned, not given. She became more cautious, more strategic, and more mindful of the people she let into her life. The betrayal did not break her. It only made her stronger, more determined to ensure that her empire would continue to thrive. Amina had already turned her pain into power, and nothing, not even betrayal, would stop her now. As the years passed, Amina's company became a global powerhouse, and she continued to grow her empire. But for her, success was no longer just about wealth, it was about leaving a legacy. She used her platform to fight for the underprivileged, for women's rights, and for those who had been rejected by society. She inspired a generation of young women to chase their dreams, no matter the obstacles. Her story became a beacon of hope for those who had been told they weren't enough, that they would never make it. She became the first billionaire in her village and the first to break generational poverty. Her name was known in every corner of the world, and her journey was written in the pages of history as one of the most remarkable tales of perseverance and triumph.